thank you to everybody who's already joined. We are just going to wait a few minutes just to give people an opportunity to get online. So we'll start in a couple of minutes. So I think I'll just start with some introductions. My name's Sarah Hayward and I'm a director at Croydon Council, and I'm overseeing the libraries service at the moment. We've also got Councillor Lewis, who's the cabinet member, who I'm going to introduce and say a few words in a moment, and Rob Hunt, who's the interim head of asset involvement, who's going to take you through the presentation this evening. Just before I hand over to Ollie, you will have seen at the beginning that this session is being recorded, and by staying on the session, you are consenting to it being recorded. So if for any reason you're not happy with that, please leave now, and this session will be put online after the fact. That's the purpose for making the recording, so you will be able to view it at a later time if you do decide not to stay with us, but obviously we would encourage you to. So I'm going to hand over to Councillor Lewis to do some introductions.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Oliver Lewis and I'm the cabinet member at Croydon Council for Culture and Regeneration. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We hope you find this evening's webinar interesting and useful to you. As you'll be aware, the council is in a very difficult financial situation at the moment, and as a result of this, we're having to take some very, very tough decisions from right across the council to dramatically reduce our expenditure, and that includes in the library service. We're currently out to consultation, and this webinar is part of that consultation process on the future of 5 libraries, and those libraries are Broad Green, that we're here to discuss this evening, but also South Norwood, Shirley, Sanderstead and Bradmore Green. We're currently in the first phase of the consultation that was due to end on the 7th of March, and I'm pleased that we have been able to extend that phase of consultation till the 14th of March, and I think Rob will present a timetable later on. Look, I hope you find it useful and interesting tonight, and these webinars are an important part of the consultation process. I hope that through this consultation we may be able to develop some community models of operation and ownership of our libraries that maintain the current level of library service, but also help us to dramatically reduce our expenditure. I'll leave it there by way of introduction, but just want to say thanks again to everyone for joining us. Thanks to all the officers for everything they're doing. But also, look, I'm looking forward to the discussion and your questions, and hopefully together we can find some solutions to the challenges that face us. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And we are here to, before I bring Rob in, we are here to answer questions. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A. We've had some submitted in advance as well. Rob's going to take you through a presentation specific to this library, and then, as I say, we'll come on to taking your questions and answering them. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm Robert Hunt, interim head of assets and involvement, heading up libraries, museum, archives, parks and green spaces. So I'll just start off tonight by going through the consultation phase. So there are 2 phases to the consultation, and we are currently in phase 1. The first phase for us is about information gathering, putting a proposal out there and working with the community to get as much feedback as we possibly can on those proposals, whether they'll work, what are the potential pitfalls, how we could maybe do things differently, and gathering the broad range of feedback from across the community to then develop into a phase 2, which will be a more detailed proposal for final decision. So just running through some of those timescales. So we launched phase 1 on the 14th of January this year, and we've now extended the deadline from the 7th of March to the 14th of March, just to allow a little bit extra time for people to get responses back in from some of the delays that we know that are currently happening across the postal service. We are hosting a series of webinars. So we started on Saturday looking at a webinar for all of the library service, which we then followed with a national community-run library peer group to look at different options for community-run libraries, and then sessions for each of the 5 libraries starting last night and running through to Wednesday this week. We are encouraging residents to complete the survey that is online. Paper copies can be made available, and there's an email address and a dedicated telephone number that I'll share with you at the end of the session tonight. But we would encourage you to complete that survey. It can be completed multiple times, so if you do get any additional information or answers to questions and that changes your thoughts, then do please complete the survey again. And once we've completed the phase 1 on the 14th of March, we'll gather all of the feedback and prepare a report that will go through to scrutiny on the 30th of March to outline our findings so far and our next steps. So then looking at phase 2, we will prepare a report to go to Cabinet in May that outlines the details of the proposals in phase 2, and we will go back out then to consult with the community again as to how those can be implemented and other things we maybe need to take into consideration. Once that consultation period ends at the end of June, we'd then be taking that through formal council processes. So there'll be additional scrutiny, Cabinet and full council sign off of, and challenge on any of the reports, and then depending on what that proposal is, we would look to start to implement that from the autumn. As of the 13th of February, we have had 1,493 respondents. I'm pleased to say since then that's increased now nearly to 1,700 responses. So we're getting some really good feedback from across the community around how our library services currently work and what we can do better and where we need to focus our attention. And I'll just go through now some of the initial feedback that we've had based on initial analysis. So one of the questions was, which is your local library? And the table here shows clearly that we're getting responses from across the whole of Croydon, and the vast majority of those people that are submitting information, so 1,337 of the respondents so far have been from members. Looking at the table, though, we've not, sorry about that, not had as many responses from the community in and around Broad Green Library. So far we've only had 76 responses, which makes up just short of 6% of the total responses received. I'd really like to encourage you all to complete the survey, to provide your feedback back to us. we know that you're caring and sort of passionate about your local library, and we don't want to miss out on any of that feedback. So please do take the time to go online or to request paper copies and complete the survey, and let us know your thoughts. One of the other questions that we asked was around the top 3 priorities for library services. And from the 1,351 responses that we'd received who completed 3 or more of their top 3, the main themes that we seem to be getting back so far around browsing and borrowing books, around events and activities, so for children, for adults, people see that as being a really valuable service that we offer. There's a strong desire for using computers, for Wi-Fi, printing, and that digital access that lots of people need. And in addition to that, space within our library buildings for work purposes, for research, for undertaking homework or studying. And so we really appreciate that feedback so far, but we'd welcome more information coming through from yourselves. So just looking at Broad Green Library in a little bit more detail, it's currently open for 35.5 hours per week. It has an annual visitor rate of 38,929, which makes up just over 2.6% of the overall visits within the borough. The library currently is home to 12,919 books, but only generates 17,258 issues annually, which again only equates to just short of 3% of the overall issues within the borough. There are 12 PCs for use by adults and children, and across those 12 PCs there are 4,353 IT sessions, but from the available time, they're only used 15% of that time, which is quite a low take up compared to other libraries across the borough. We were asked for further information around trends over the last 5 years across our library buildings, and as we can see for Broad Green, there is a downward trend from 2015, where we had 59,302 visits that have reduced now down to 38,929 visits. So quite a significant reduction. And in addition to that, Broad Green Library was open on an additional day between September and March while we refurbished Norbury Library, and that doesn't seem to have had much of an impact on visitor figures. Similar trend for book issues, and actually looking at the graph, we can see that that's quite a stark reduction in number of books that have been issued from Broad Green Library. In 2015-16, there was 40,109 book issues, which is reduced down to 17,258, which is more than a 50% decrease. So it's a trend that we've seen across the whole of the library sector, but it seems to be more pronounced in Broad Green Library. And finally, just looking at the IT usage over the last 5 years, again, that's reduced. So in 2015-16, we had 7,733 IT sessions, and that's reduced down to 4,353, so a 43% reduction. We also have had quite a few additional questions that have come through, asking for more information around operational expenditure across the 5 libraries that we are proposing either to close or operate on a cost-neutral basis. So to provide a bit more detail around the expenditure, we pay £12,152 for business rates. This is a discounted rate within the council, so that's just something that would need to be taken into consideration if anybody was looking to take that on as a community operated library. And from a cash handling perspective, we pay £245 per year to handle petty cash and move that around and back into the bank. But we do generate £1,300 worth of income into the service from selling waste refuge bags, from stationery and other sort of small items such as posters. In addition to that, we receive questions around how much we spend on our book stock, and generally, because we buy books across the whole of the library's portfolio, they are available to be borrowed from any of the libraries, but as a proportion, it's about £10,000 per year for Broad Green Library across adults, children's and large print materials, and we do receive a discount on that as part of our membership of the Libraries Consortium. And again, that's something that would potentially need to be factored in for anybody who was looking to take on a community-run library building. From a maintenance and repair perspective, we have two types of work. So from a reactive perspective, so something that we haven't planned, such as a leak, that we have spent around £4,500 per year across 18, 19 and 19, 20, with a reduced amount in 2020 down to £409. And from a planned perspective, so worked where we know in advance or we need to do regular servicing of our boilers or other equipment, we spend about £1,439 per year for that routine maintenance. We appreciate that the building needs some work. It's not as significant as other buildings across the portfolio. And in 2019, we carried out a building condition survey that identified that there is repair or replacement work needed to the gutters within the valleys on the roof, the rainwater guttering around the outside of the building. There's some work to the interior plaster that needs to be reskimmed, and then some close exterior close boarding and intruder alarm system upgrades. And as a estimated cost, so this isn't based upon a quote, that's just short of £27,000. So some of the questions that have come through to us as part of the survey feedback so far has been around what will happen to the books and PCs if the library was to close. In that scenario, we would look to move the book stock to other libraries across the borough, get as many books as we possibly can onto shelves. Where we were unable to do that, they would still be able to be reserved, but would probably be held in the back office, but would still be able to be reserved and delivered to a local library or as part of the home library service. And again, we would look to accommodate as many PCs across other libraries as we could, dependent on space and layout. Questions have come out around how we can access other activities and community spaces, and we will work with local communities to identify other community and voluntary run activities and spaces within their local area that they could go to and work with were the library to close. And questions around what would happen if you couldn't travel to your nearest alternative library. We do have a home library service for people who are eligible, and that is generally for people who have mobility issues and can't actually travel far. So we would look to encourage people to use that service as much as possible, and also work with our befriending volunteers who can also deliver books to individuals. Some of the suggestions that have come back to help us going forwards have been around income generation and how we can make best use of that. Suggestions around meeting spaces and hiring buildings out of hours. And we have considered that as part of our library's transformation programme. Each building has its own individual space and layout issues. Some have spaces that can be hired. We did design into the new South Norwood Library flexible furniture that could allow the space to be adapted and for hire. So we would look to do something similar, but it's not always possible in all of our library buildings. Another suggestion was around cafes and shops being based in library buildings, and not all buildings are able to host a cafe. We've developed that within the refurbished Norbury Library, but it wasn't possible in Selsdon. And we know from experience looking into to how cafes operate in libraries across other local authorities that they aren't big income generators, and are basically there to help encourage people to stay in libraries longer rather than to generate a profit. There's been some good feedback around charging people for desk space for small businesses and entrepreneurs, and that's something that we will look to see how we could potentially develop that going forwards, without discouraging people from using the space, and how we could use our libraries in different ways to as art galleries or event spaces. And as we lead up into Borough of Culture in 2023, we'll be looking to develop more of that. But we do have considerations around security and environmental conditions that we would need to take into consideration before we could necessarily put an art gallery in a library space. And then suggestions around fundraising activities, and it is easier for local communities to be able to fundraise and donate the money to the council than it is for the council to be able to do a specific fundraising activity, although we do look for available grants and other monies that could be used, but it is an activity that is best realised through the community. On Saturday, we hosted a webinar for community-run libraries, which was attended by the community-run libraries national peer network, and we had 6 libraries represented. For those of you who were unable to attend, I would recommend logging on and looking at the video recording that we've got from the session. There was lots of useful information and explained the multiple ways that community libraries can be operated, from working very closely with the local authority to be completely separate, and all the different funding opportunities that would be available, use of volunteers and the like, and that will be made available through the library's consultation website later this week. So at this stage, I'll hand back to Sarah to start working through some of the questions that we received.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for that really comprehensive presentation. We've only had one in the chat so far, so I'm going to go to the chat first, actually, to encourage others to ask questions as well. So this is from Elizabeth Ash, which asks, you're still only reporting stats on the 5 libraries under threat and comparing their usage to the whole service. When will we get the full figures for all our libraries? Sorry, when will the figures for all our libraries be made available?
Yeah, look, I'll come in on this, Sarah. I guess on the sessions on the weekend, I made a commitment to do this. I'm not sure what is feasible in terms of the capacity of colleagues in the service. They're working very hard at the moment, but as I did commit to it at the weekend, we will endeavour to do it as soon as possible. So absolutely something we want to do. So.
And we are committed to publishing answers to all of the questions that we're asked in these sessions, because for those of you that have been on more than one session, we have struggled to get through all of the questions in the time on some of the other sessions. So this will be updated when we publish an updated Q&A. So going back to some of the questions we received beforehand, and this has come up in other sessions. So I've got concerns over travelling issues, such as young children and those with mobility and disability issues. How will these be taken into account? Rob, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, so I would suggest sort of providing feedback through the survey to give us that detail. Where there are specific sort of mobility issues and travelling, we do have the home library service that can maybe help and support individuals with that. We have, as we've looked at the 5 libraries that we were proposing to close or operate on a cost neutral basis, that's been around having another library within 1.5 miles travelling distance to try and minimise the impact on local communities. I do appreciate that that's not always easy, and for some people that means that they need to take multiple forms of public transport to get to other buildings, but we're trying to minimise the impact on individuals. But if we can just get that feedback through so that we can fully take that on board and specific examples, that I think that'd be very beneficial.
Thank you, Rob. And continuing on a theme, we've got a few questions about different aspects of equalities issues like that one. So I'll go through a couple of the others that we've got here as well. So how can local residents access Tamil, Urdu and other languages in our stock collections?
So Broad Green Library has a large collection of Tamil and other specific language groups that are sort of currently dedicated within Broad Green Library. We're not able to offer select and collect at the moment. Once that service is back up and running, then we will those books can be requested through our online library service or through select and collect and collected from the nearest select and collect library. And if the library was to close, we would look to move those books to other local libraries to continue access, I suppose, for the communities that need those books.
Thank you. So then continuing on other equalities issues, we've got how will we resolve deprivation issues?
Again, I think it's around receiving feedback for the impact that this will have on the local community. We are looking at our equalities impact information at the moment and gathering that ahead of any formal proposals that we're putting out there as part of phase 2. We do appreciate that Broad Green Library is in an area of deprivation, and we're trying to minimise the impact of that by moving services to other nearby libraries, or for community groups maybe to come in and take over the library and continue to offer the services that we've been able to offer, so that they're not lost to the local community.
Thank you, Rob. And I think it's worth adding to all of those questions that were about different aspects of our duties to different disadvantaged communities, that we have to do a thorough equalities impact assessment when we come up with our final proposals, and that will be published as part of the decision-making process. So we will have to show that we've properly considered the equalities impact of the proposals that we're making, and that we've taken steps to mitigate those impacts where they are there. And as I say, that will be published with the final decision-making reports. I don't know, Councillor Lewis, whether you want to add anything on the equalities issues raised?
Well, look, it's obviously an important issue that we'll take very seriously through the consultation. I'd encourage anyone who's participating in the consultation to raise any particular issues that they think are pertinent, and so that all of these can be fed in. But like I said, you know, we will take it very seriously, and any decisions that are made will reference the information that we gain through the consultation.
Thank you. Next question that we've had in advance: will IT and space at other libraries be increased to allow for additional customers from the closed libraries?
Yeah, so we will try to accommodate that as many of the PCs as possible. We've recently upgraded all of the IT across all of our buildings, so we've got brand new PCs, but we've also got full fibre broadband and increased Wi-Fi capacity, so people can bring their own devices, and we will try to maximise that as much as possible across the remaining libraries in Croydon. And some of that depends on space within those buildings, but we will accommodate as much as possible.
Brilliant, thank you. And then a couple of questions about alternative proposals. So one suggestion about exploring a volunteer-run community centre, and one proposal about have we explored reducing hours?
Yep, so we are open to suggestions from the community as to how we could potentially work with them to operate a community-run library. And I would refer you back to the session on Saturday that we had, that we can't be prescriptive as to how a community-run library would operate. There are a number of different options available. Some examples work very closely with the local authority. The local authority paid for the books, and they had a shared library management system, whereas other examples on the day explained how they were completely separate to the local authority. Others relied on 100% donations for books. So we don't want to be prescriptive. We want to start that conversation with the community group to see what would be feasible and how we could potentially take any options forward.
Thank you. We've had a question in the chat and a question in advance about Broad Green having a specialism for children's books and lending, and the question in advance about how we would provide alternative local programmes for children. Some of that's sort of wrapped up in the answer around alternative provision, looking at alternative provision in other libraries, and the equality stuff that we've already spoken a bit about. But do you want to say something specifically about services for children, Rob?
So we do host a number of sort of rhyme time, story time activities within Broad Green Library, and we do also offer similar events across our other libraries. We would look to capacity, so whether we have capacity within the existing service to continue to accommodate the children's services elsewhere, and if there was increased demand, we would look to meet that as much as possible.
Brilliant, thank you. Councillor Lewis, have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, look, I guess you know, our children's programs are really enjoyable. Actually, I don't have kids myself, but when I've been along to our libraries, I've always enjoyed Wiggles and Jiggles or Rhyme Time or whatever it is that's going on at the time. Look, I mean, there are and will be, you know, a significant number of libraries operating these services in the borough going forward, and and services for children will continue at those, and we'll try and enhance those as much as possible within the financial constraints that the service is under.
Thank you. So going back to the chat, Nicola Glover has asked, can your consultation be accessed in languages other than English, given that Broad Green has so many foreign language books? Rob, do you want to?
The survey, I believe, is currently in English on the website. If members would like a specific translated version of the survey, they can request that, and we will get that sent through either as a paper survey, or we can work with translators to get the survey completed.
Thank you very much. And then another attendee has asked, are you planning to move staff from local libraries to main ones, as right now the main Croydon Library look underemployed? So I think I'll start that one on the process point, and then maybe come to you, Rob, if you want to add anything. So we're obviously doing the consultation in 2 phases, as Rob explained in his presentation. So we're really generating ideas at the moment, and then the second phase will be a consultation on the final proposal. Obviously, we don't know what our staffing needs will be at the moment, because that very much depends on the final proposal. But if we do need to make any changes to staffing, which could be location of work, hours of work, or indeed the numbers of staff, and obviously if we've got fewer libraries, we may need to reduce some of our staff as well, that will be done through consultation with our librarians and through proper human resources processes, as you would expect. But we don't know at the moment, because we haven't got the final proposals. I don't know whether you want to add anything to that, Rob.
No, I don't think so. It's as Sarah said, we will work through the process around consultation first, and then knowing what service we will be looking to offer from the autumn onwards, we'll then look to structure our services to match that need, and specific libraries. I mean, we'll minimise any staff reductions by filling vacancies that may be across other library buildings.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask a technical question of Lucy or Sophie, if they can come in, because Elizabeth Ash has put in the comments that she can't see, that apparently attendees at the webinar can't see the questions that other people are posting in the Q&A. Can Lucy or Sophie either explain that or try and resolve that?
Yes, we can change that so they can. The others were set up like this. I'm not certain why sometimes questions were showing up in the other one, but we can definitely look at this and change it.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think it would be helpful if people aren't asking the same question over again if it's already been asked. So hopefully that will be resolved shortly, Elizabeth. And again, just to be clear, Elizabeth, you said thanks. That didn't answer my question though. Did the full stats information? Did the full stats inform the decision to choose these 5? You were just saying you didn't know how easy it would be to access. This implies it's not something yet sought out. Can you talk, Rob, a bit about the data that informed the decision? Obviously, you did talk through some of this in the presentation.
Yeah. So as part of our review of the libraries and the proposal that we put out there for Broad Green, Bradmore Green, Sanderstead, Shirley, and South Norwood libraries, we looked at our visits, book issues, IT access, geographical location in comparison to where neighbouring libraries would be, and in addition to that, the maintenance costs. From an operational performance perspective, the 5 libraries that we've selected have generally the lowest footfall, book issues, and digital access, and I believe that those 5 libraries in total were about made up less than 15% of the total book issues, visits, and IT access across the borough. So we have looked at that data before making our recommendation, but at this stage it is a recommendation. We are open to other suggestions.
Oliver, Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, look, sorry, I was trying to click on the type answer function, but happy to answer it live as well. What I was saying really was about the formatting of that information. So obviously officers had access to that information and made decisions based on that, which is why we're at the point in the consultation that we are now. But obviously, if we want to put that online as part of the consultation materials, we need to format that and pull it together into such a form that is suitable for that consultation. So we'll try and do that as soon as possible and get it out on the consultation website. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And one of our library staff has just helpfully confirmed to me in a private message that we do have all of that data, and we are planning to put it in the FAQs that are posted at the end of the sessions. Then the last sessions finish tomorrow night, so hopefully those FAQs will go up shortly after tomorrow, so you will have that data, Elizabeth, and apologies, we haven't been able to get it out before. There aren't any new questions. Oh, hang on, no, there are some more questions in the chat. So it's another question about after school activities and children. So the Broad Green is a local library for kids, especially to access books and after school activities, and some kids don't have enough time to travel to other libraries. I think we've in part answered that, but I don't know whether you've got anything to add, Rob?
Again, I think it's feedback that is relevant for us to have around our decision making for the phase 2 proposals. We've tried to minimise the impact on the local community by choosing libraries with the lowest footfall, with the lowest number of book issues, and having another library in reasonably close proximity. So we have tried to mitigate that as much as possible, but getting that feedback as to how it will work practically for you as a resident and a member of the libraries really is valuable. So please do complete the survey or provide information due to us via the library's consultation email address.
And Councillor Lewis, I think you were trying to come in there.
Yeah, look, just to say that obviously the library service does have to make significant financial savings, but we are hoping that in at least some sites across the borough, community solutions and models of operation might come forward that help us to reduce our budget, but also maintain delivery of service. So, I hope that there might be a community group out there that is interested in running a community library in Broad Green, and they will continue to run, excellent and different and perhaps even better services for children and young people.
Brilliant, thank you. So I have still got a few questions that were submitted in advance. They're not going to take the 15 minutes we've got left, so I would encourage people who are here to, if you've still got questions that you need answering, to do put them in the chat, and I will go back to the questions that we received in advance for now. So here's one: how will we support families who need local access to books, Wi-Fi and computers?
I would say to that we are still looking to offer the same services across our other libraries. There are other local libraries available across Broad Green that will have access to books, Wi-Fi, digital access printing, as well as all the events and activities that are currently offered across the service. So we would try to maximise as much as we possibly can within the financial restraints that we face with across our other library sites. However, if there's a local community group that are working there, we would look to work with them as well as much as possible.
Thank you.
And look, just on that, Sarah, obviously we are committed to running the best quality statutory library service possible, given the financial constraints that we're under. We have to, we currently have 13 sites around the borough, and if it reduces, we know that means that for some residents in Croydon that will mean additional travel time or changes to routine. But we hope that people may be able to access the library service that we've got in different locations, or virtually online. There's lots of e-resources, audio books, available online, and we hope that residents will be able to change the way that they access the service based on the new shape of the service going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. This one's related to sort of how we selected the libraries included in the proposal. So why is it not viable to close well-used libraries as an alternative? I don't know whether Councillor Lewis, whether you want to start on that one or...
Well, look, I mean, we could, I guess we could propose to close, well-used libraries and maintain libraries which are less well-used, but we've taken a view that we should try and minimise the impact of these decisions on the people of Croydon as a whole, and that means, focusing on some of our libraries which are, unfortunately a little bit less well used than some of the others. So, I appreciate that for those people that use those libraries, that is not, an ideal situation to be in. But we are hopeful that community groups might come forward that want to continue running the service, but help us to reduce the cost of running the service to the council.
Thank you. And the final question we had in advance was, what alternative printing and job retraining opportunities will be made available? Rob?
I think, as mentioned earlier, we will look to move, we'd look to move the services to other neighbouring libraries. So we do currently offer digital access and printing from all of our library buildings. We'd look to move the IT equipment across where possible, for people to be able to continue to print and access the internet, either through a Croydon device, or if they wanted to bring their own device and access through Wi-Fi. And we do run a number of job and training events and activities, either with colleagues from across the council or from other community groups and voluntary sector organisations or charities, around skills, employment, CV writing, and those things. So we will look to continue to offer those services. It may just be for the local community that they need to go to another neighbouring library to access those.
Thank you. I can't see, I'm just struggling to get the question tab up. Oh yeah, we do have another question in on the chat now. Some kids would like to borrow books and go to the library by themselves, so it will affect their independence. That's from an anonymous attendee. I do think we've sort of covered that one sort of quite well in the answers already, but I think it's really important that people with children do let us know about the impact that these proposals will have and suggest alternatives. And actually, if you have kids or volunteer at a youth centre or are a teacher or what have you, encourage those kids that you are in contact with to contribute to the consultation. I don't think it will surprise anyone here that younger people are currently responding in lower numbers than other age groups. So it would be really, really helpful to hear directly from young people about what they value in the library service. Councillor Lewis, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I said it in reference to another question, Sarah, that, we recognise that it will mean changes to routines and different journeys for people to access the library service. But, I hope that perhaps, parents or carers can, maybe first couple of times accessing a new library might make the journey with their children children, but once that journey has become, you know, more of a routine and more established, you know, it becomes easier to do alone. Appreciate that won't work for every family. You know, it's important that people do fill out the survey and let us know how these changes will affect them. But again, you know, if you can't access the in-person services at the library, there's, you know, for a lot of people, there's also the opportunity to engage with the library service digitally, accessing digital books and other resources. So lots of options, and we hope that people will be able to find different ways of accessing the library service.
Thank you. Have you got anything you want to add, Rob?
I don't think so. I think that, yeah, it was a comprehensive answer, and yeah, we will we'll help try and support the community, but it is around sort of getting that valuable feedback from the surveys to help us shape our decisions for phase 2.
Thank you. So we've got about 10 minutes of our time left. I'm going to give Councillor Lewis and Rob some time to sum up as well. I don't propose to sort of keep people here longer if they've got everything out of it they need, but I will give a couple of minutes just in case any of our attendees tonight have had some last minute thoughts. I'll give a couple of minutes to type some more questions in the chat, and if we don't get any in those couple of minutes, then I will ask Councillor Lewis and Rob to wrap up.
Well, look, maybe I'll just say a few words as people are thinking, Sarah, and I'll forgo wrapping up at the end if that makes sense. I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who's on the webinar today for their time this evening. It is really great to know that we do have lots of people in communities around Croydon who are interested in and engaged in their library service. Thanks for all the questions as well. Some of them are really important and vital to this consultation process. So I just want to add my voice to the calls which have been made by others today for everyone to fill out the consultation survey, to also share it within your networks as well. You know, look, I mean, hopefully we get more responses than there are people on this call. Hopefully there are people on this call who are engaged in community groups and in organisations which, you know, extend the reach of the council, so to speak, in this regard. And so please do share it within your networks. It is a genuine consultation, and we really do want to hear your views and your thoughts, your ideas about how we can shape the library service going forward. But we do have to be clear that the council does have to make some really, really tough decisions to dramatically reduce our expenditure. So not easy, but hopefully together we can continue to take our library service forward in Croydon. So I'll leave it there and look, just thank everyone for the questions and the conversation this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. There's been no further questions. Rob, do you want to say anything in conclusion?
Just to thank everybody for the time this evening and for the passion and commitment that they've shown so far with the suggestions and completing the surveys and the feedback that we have received. I'd like to ask that you continue to complete the surveys and get the information back to us. It does help us genuinely to shape how the service is going to look going forwards. If there are any community groups out there who are interested in running Broad Green Library, then please do message us at libraries consultation at croydon.gov.uk, and we will arrange a meeting to work through any proposals and what they may look like and use of the building. But yeah, please do make contact if you are interested. There is a poll that we've got that we'd like to fill in just to give some feedback tonight. So that should now be on screen. Sorry, we just there are 3 more consultations taking place. So there's a survey at a webinar 6:45 this evening for Shirley Library, and then tomorrow at 5:30 till 6:30 another webinar for Bradmore Green Library, and then at 6:45 to 7:45 tomorrow for Sanderstead Library. So if you are interested, please do also register through Eventbrite to attend those webinars, and we will look to publish the recordings online on our library's consultation website, just to let you know that that isn't hosted by library staff, and so we are reliant on an external provider uploading that information. So please do bear with us for a couple of days for that information to be uploaded. And just to finally say thank you all again for attending this session, and we do welcome your feedback through the library's consultation website, through library's consultation at croydon.gov.uk, or through our dedicated telephone answer phone line, which is 020 7884 5159. And if you leave a message, then a member of our libraries team will give you a call back, either to take your details for sending out copies of paper surveys, or for actually completing the survey over the telephone. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I think we'll finish there and probably see some of you at 6:45. Thank you very much.